Hey there, everybody. I'm Justicar, normally known for XCOM, but I've been playing a lot of Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate, and it shares some similarities, and I've been streaming it a lot. So, some people were like, early game tips, how do you build classes and things, so I'm going to make a few videos just for like a quick start guide, I guess. And I brought along Olish, who's been in my LPs, who usually has good tactical insights and picks up on things I miss. Hey, buddy.
Hey.
So the first thing we got asked last night, and we went over it, and I didn't record it, was how do you skill out your classes? So this video, I think, is going to be the 4 basic classes, and we'll make another one with the 4 advanced classes. So let us go find... So we're going to start with Justicar. These guys are kind of your starting tanks, but they're mostly kind of a versatile utility class. They can very quickly get Terminator armor, which is why I kind of think of them as a tank. That was the first thing I did when I played, just slam Terminator armor on them. Let's just, start 12 o'clock and go in order. Up top, you can pick up Aegis Shield upgrades, which are decent. You can make them pretty tanky pretty quickly without expending any more resources for a, what would that be, a total of 5-point Aegis Shield?
Yeah.
Fortress lets you transfer armor to other people, which is situational. If somebody's caught out exposed, being able to transfer armor is a situationally valuable asset, although it's expensive. Assume you take everything in here. Your Aegis Shield is now 6 points. No, I'm sorry. 8. Adds 3 more. But it's also going to be 2 AP and 2 willpower to activate it and then transfer it. So that means your Justicar's not doing a whole lot the rest of the turn other than shielding somebody.
Yeah, it's a panic button. One of the things that I like about Fortress is that it's any range. You could have somebody across the entire battlefield who's not under any threat, throw up Aegis Shield, and transfer it to somebody who's kind of going to get hit as soon as you hit end turn. It's not something that's going to crop up. It's not something you should ever let crop up, but if it does, you can plan for it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I like that, yeah. I kind of wish it and Provoke were swapped. I think Provoke has more value. This just makes the enemies want to attack the person that provoked them. It shares this skill with the Chaplain. These are 2 classes that can have a lot of armor and can get a lot of value out of Provoke. If enemies are going to survive for a turn or 2, having them attack the person that is the most defensive is a better option than letting them run anywhere. And you can also kind of control where they go. Especially if they're melee-only enemies, you can provoke them and kind of move back, and they'll try to run forward, maybe into an Overwatch trap, or at least maybe just not killing somebody that's closer and more vulnerable. The skills up here upgrade the area to provoke more people, and the warp charge I actually would not recommend. Crazed has been unreliable for me. Theoretically, it's like confusion in an RPG where the enemy has a chance to attack nearby allies. This has been 50-50 for me. It's worked a couple of times, and sometimes they just completely ignore it, and then they run for whoever provoked them. And then occasionally, while crazed, they've even just attacked not an ally, not the person that provoked them, but just one of my Marines that was closer to them than the provoker.
Yeah, so my take on this is that if you're going to lean towards using Provoke for any reason, warp charging it for Crazed is less reliable, and you might as well just Provoke. It's 3 willpower to use, and it's so expensive for something that may not do anything at all.
Yeah, and you're wasting valuable skill points. You only have usually 18 skill points, so there's other things to spend it on, and it's not reliable. However, up here is Enduring Reflexes. And Enduring Reflexes can be very good on everybody, every class. Lots of people have passives, like down here, we'll get to it. Ruthless Precision is great. Enduring Reflexes lets these passives trigger an extra time a turn. There's also Rapid Reload. So I wish Enduring Reflexes was closer to the start. It's a really good skill, but I have to go through... Well, I guess these aren't dead picks, but the warp charge of Aegis is costly for more willpower to what is a skill that doesn't cost willpower to start with. Provoke's... I'm not going to be mad at having to pick Provoke to get to Enduring Reflexes. So it's an investment to get to it. You can consider it. This guy I built, this was my first Justicar. I didn't get to it, but I'm still pretty happy with this build. Starting out from the right, this is kind of the range tree for the Justicar. It starts off giving your Cybolt an extra damage, then you move into 10% crit, make your crits do 2 more damage, and then optionally, you can have a Psy Cannon. And you might be wondering about that, but if you have Terminator armor, you can mount a Psy Cannon one-handed. And that can be pretty handy. It kind of depends on your gear. It also depends on how you play your Justicar. If, like me, you're more melee oriented with your Justicar, it's not a necessary. Fuck words. Help me out.
Not necessary.
Thank you. It's not necessary. But the other skills are really good. I got tired of having my Justicar slightly out of range and shooting things with a Stormbolter and feeling like I was missing out on damage potential. Because he didn't have any crit damage. So if he scored a crit, it wasn't doing anything extra. And I started to really hate that as my squads had higher and higher crit chance. Rapid reload, really nice. Things that save you AP are almost always must-haves. They make life just so much nicer. You only have 3 AP a turn. If you get an AP back for free for an action, it extends your turn by 25%. This tree, I guess, is kind of optional. You can run these guys straight melee. Like, you can slam all of the melee skills on the left and ignore this. But if you want a little bit more versatility, I would recommend these 4 skill points. Any thoughts on that?
No, it's pretty solid.
Alright. Moving down is, I call it Wave the Flag because of the icon, but Honor the Chapter is probably a must-have for the Justicar. It doesn't
Every Justicar should have this.
Really, they should. It doesn't look too impressive when I started the game, but later on it became much clearer in my mind how valuable it was. At 1 AP and 2 will points, you give 2 AP because immediately you take the passive upgrade to it. Actually, that's right. It starts at 1 AP, 1 willpower, and this adds 1 AP to the target and costs 1 more willpower. The UI kind of auto updates, and sometimes it's confusing. This is just great. It's more AP on the field. You are generating AP, and AP is life. Furthermore, if the Justicar is out of position, or you, I don't know, make a slight misplay and you find yourself needing another AP or 2 on a specific character, you can pick that up with the Justicar. Wave the flag at them at any range, and you can get yourself out of a bad spot. You can make the second attack to make sure you get a kill so that you don't get hit by something bad on their turn. It's just a great skill. Always have it.
And I wouldn't even necessarily say the Justicar out of position, because what Honor the Chapter lets you do is it lets you spend the Justicar's AP and willpower to give AP to somebody else who might be in a position to use it more effectively. And that can be everybody together, and you've just got, a melee monster or a ranged monster, somebody in a position to hit multiple people with a ranged attack, for example.
Right. The right person in the right place with the right skill can oftentimes be more valuable than a Justicar's AP somewhere less advantageous.
Yeah, and that's a situation that's going to crop up a lot. You're going to find lots of uses for Honor the Chapter if you look for them.
Yeah. Typically for me, it's teleporting interceptors into fights and then not being able to quite finish them. The warp charge for Honor the Chapter is pricey, but pretty good. It really adds a lot of willpower, but unfortunately, this is not add 3 AP on top of that. This is the end result, is you will give the target 3 AP and a willpower, but it will cost you 4 willpower. It's pricey, but it's really, really strong. And it's optional, so you don't need to spend the extra willpower if you don't need it. And between all of these wonderful skills are pockets. Having extra equipment is great. Maybe not immediately, but once you start unlocking stuff in the armory, getting things like the Blessed Greaves that add ranged crit chance, or the scrolls that add melee crit chance, or extended magazines, or the stun grenades.
I mean, even just extra willpower, especially for a Justicar, if you're going to be using Honor the Chapter, you can burn through a lot of willpower very quickly, and having an extra 2 to 4 willpower can help power that battery a little bit longer.
Yeah, good point. What is it? The incense sensors.
Yeah, the Sacred Incense.
Yeah. Most Justicars, and we do again advise you always pick this skill tree, will then have adjacent access to Crushing Charge, which I didn't pick up for a while, and I regret, because early on in the game, this is amazing, especially against cultists who love Overwatch. This is send the Justicar screaming forward 10 spaces, which is 2 move units, so it's 2 AP worth of move for 1 AP. But it also deals stun damage. It's immune to autos, meaning you can charge through Overwatch and will not trigger their Overwatch. And then it has upgrades. Upgrade Hobbled is questionable. I don't think it's ever really been critical to cut down the move speed of enemies. It could be a nice quality of life thing, maybe, if you need other people to chase them down or something. But typically, if you're charging into them, you're engaging them in melee, and they're not really going to go anywhere.
Yeah, the main problem with Hobbled is that the enemy doesn't tend to run away from you, and if you're charging in, they're already right next to you or very close to you.
But this was a pick to get to the upgrade, which increases the amount of stun that Crushing Charge does. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend Hobbled, but at 27 HP, I didn't feel the need for my Justicar to have another +4 either. So depending on your situation, either Hobbled or Health, but I would recommend picking one or the other to go through them to get the upgrade to stun. I probably will have to make like a basics mechanics video as well, but stun is wonderful. You always want stun. The short version is, if you stun enemies, especially if you just got into melee with them, is that you execute them, you get AP back, and you start basically, I don't know, what would be the best term? Force multiplying. Snowballing. Yeah, you start snowballing. So stun damage, great. And then let's go over here on the left. This is all of the melee skills for your Justicar. You're going to pick up some willpower to power Hammerhand. Hammerhand is going to be shared by a lot of melee-focused classes. It is just a guaranteed crit. It is do a bunch of damage, set your crit to 100. I think I always point out it is theoretically possible to not crit if some things have, the hardened trait or the buff.
Yeah, there are a few enemies that have
reducing
reduction.
Yeah. But most of the time, Hammerhand is a guaranteed crit. Guaranteed crits in melee are great because then you get the little precision targeting interface, and you can, chop someone's arm off to disable their gun or their sword. You can do extra stun damage, whatever. Getting crits in melee is very advantageous. It's also how you harvest seeds once you get to that after the start of the game. So if you don't have a better seed harvesting option, run up there and Hammerhand them in the seeds.
Yeah, early on, Hammerhand is going to be your most reliable method of harvesting seeds.
The Warp Charge to cause bleed damage. This is not a pick I would recommend, but it is in the way to the bottom left, which I would. So you can spend a willpower to inflict bleed for 2 damage over 2 turns. So 1 willpower for 4 damage seems good. And if it was 1 willpower for 4 damage up front, I would absolutely go for it. That's not what this is. Bleed damage ticks at the end of the enemy turn. So even if you Hammerhand somebody and you leave them alive with 2 damage or 2 health and they're bleeding, they're still going to take their whole turn before they take that 2 damage of bleed and then die. So it doesn't prevent you from getting attacked.
Yeah, it will never save you in action.
We'll probably talk a little bit more about it with the Apothacary because they have a big bleed tree, but bleeding is underwhelming at current. So, like I said, I just picked this to get through to... Well, not even this. This is a Force Strike upgrade. These could be useful if you want them. I think I went a little bit more ranged. And, of course, your builds are going to vary based on a number of things, if you hire people pre-built or you build them from scratch, and if you can commune with them. None of my people have been communed because I don't have dead fallen brothers. But down here, Force Strike for 1 willpower, adding a bunch of damage, and adding Armor Break can be pretty good. There are later enemies that show up with a lot of armor, and they are reliably likely to live more than 1 turn of fighting. So, because armor goes away when you hit it, and then it comes back at the start of Nurgle's turn. Armor breaking doesn't matter if you're going to kill something in 1 turn, but if it's going to live multiple turns, having to go through that shielding again and again sucks.
Yeah, I don't like armor break. In general, you don't want things to live multiple turns. I would think of armor break as being more valuable if it took out armor before applying your damage, but that's not the way it works. Armor break applies after you do damage.
Yeah, that's
So
a good point.
fully upgrading Force Strike here doesn't allow you to bust through 2 more armor if you're trying to kill something in 1 turn.
Yeah, it just makes that armor not come back the next turn. So, would be good if you have points to spend. Probably kind of a low priority, depends on your struggles. But we have gone through both of these kind of optional skills to get to Ruthless Precision. 50% chance when you score a crit in melee to gain an AP back immediately. Free attack. It's great. Get it. Always get it. This is why crit chance is important. And later on when you get focus boosting abilities or items, focus applies to this. It boosts your chance to get AP back. More AP is life. It's a snowballing effect. You crit them, you deal a bunch of damage, then you get an AP back to follow that up. It's great.
And because this is a once per turn auto ability, you can push this up to triggering more than once per turn.
Right, I was about to say, that's why things like Enduring Reflexes are great. Unfortunately, they're very far apart on the skill tree.
It's a pretty big investment to get both of them, but it can be worth it.
Yeah. The last bit of Justicar we have, Willpower, if you need it. Upgrade Hammerhand to do 1 more damage. Not really a priority, but you might want to get it on your way to Rend the Unclean. Now, I haven't built all of my Justicars the way I have with Ulrich here. Rend the Unclean is actually very good. It is a big AoE that starts off at 6 damage. Or is that influenced by my weapon? No, I think it starts off.
I think it's just 6 damage.
Yeah. It is willpower intensive, sort of, at 2, but you gain willpower back from killing, and a 6 damage AoE is likely to kill something, especially early on in the game. So it can kind of refund itself. And then the upgrades for it make it do even more damage, which is great. An 8 damage AoE is never going to fail to be relevant, even in the later game. And then you can warp charge it to increase its size and damage, just making it even better. Early on, I kind of wish I had invested in this. In the very first handful of missions, I kind of struggled with the Pox Groaners that would summon the 1 AP, or no, I'm sorry, 1 HP, like, Groaners that would just swarm me. And when you have like 4 or 5 of those, it's a real AP cost to have to kill those and then kill the thing that's making them, and so forth. Whereas just Rend the Unclean could solve a lot of those problems.
The other thing is that the warp charge, I'm normally pretty, lukewarm on the various warp charges, but Rend the Uncleans is very good. There's a lot of situations where it's worth it to spend 1 extra willpower just for 2 damage on multiple targets, or 1 extra willpower to include an additional target in the area. You're going to get a lot of value out of the warp charge upgrade.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is about it for Justicars. So, if you want to go solid melee, full left side. Always pick up Honored the Chapter. And to taste, I would say Crushing Charge and ranged options. If you really want to go super tank or something, Provoke can protect your other Marines. Alright, what do we got? Let's go... Purgator. Purgators are your ranged guys. It would be strange to give them a Stormbolter and have them melee, but you can. But these guys are... their skill trees are 100% ranged focused. Let's just start at 12 o'clock and work our way around. Willpower, I mean, they have a few abilities that use willpower, but we're going to go into Emperor's Light. This is something I haven't picked, but I can absolutely see value for. It inflicts Purge 85% of the time. Purge clears mutations off Nurgles. sometimes mutations can be a real hassle. At the start, they start off with like 2 armor, 4 health, maybe it's an extra damage in melee. Purging mutations can be worthwhile. I haven't built a Purgator to do that, but I see value in it.
Yeah, especially there's a few enemies, like, for example, the Chaos Spawn,
Oh yeah.
that generate a lot of mutations. Being able to purge all of those off at once is very helpful in taking them down.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that... Oh, no, you know what? I think the purge value we're seeing is being affected by the...
Yeah, he's got the Sanctic Shard. It's
Okay.
it's a 50% base, but it can be upgraded with the Warp Charge to be 100%.
Yeah. Okay. I wish it didn't do that.
Yeah, the main core benefit of Emperor's Light is that it applies blinded, which there's a few ways to do it. -2 damage on enemy range attacks is pretty modest, but if you're in a situation where you don't feel like you can advance, you've got your people trading shots at cover, an extra -2 damage on enemy range attacks really reduces the incoming.
I feel like the blind is going to be useful in the early game where cultists are shooting at you for like 3. Because at 3, screw it, just walk through their gunfire. They're doing -2 blinded, you're going to take 1. If you have a Terminator armor, you have armor value, they're not actually hurting you. Walk through them. So I think Emperor's Light pays off early game with the blind, and then pays off late game with the purge.
Yeah, it pays off late game with the purge. It still has some value late game, because even when enemies are doing 6 damage ranged attacks, you can not eliminate it, but you can reduce it by 2 from the blind, and then also 1 or 2 points from the cover as well.
Right, yeah. It upgrades for area, it upgrades to Warp Charge the purge to 100%, and then if you need it, more willpower behind there. So this could be a solid pick. It has value early and it has value late. I may not have personally tested it out, but I definitely see it being useful. Moving over to the right-hand tree, Sanctified Killzone is pretty much a guaranteed pick, I would say, for a Purgator. It just sets down an area where everything you shoot takes an extra 2 damage from every attack. It is a force multiplier.
It is just the inverse of blind as well.
Yeah. Do this at the start of your turn. Order of operations is important, and remembering that if you see a cluster of tough enemies and you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna really have to work on that. Remember you have Sanctified Killzone, use it first. There's been several times where I've gotten halfway through my turn, selected my Purgator, and then been like, oh, right, I could have done this. This is a great skill. On its own, it's pretty great. You can upgrade it for duration, which is, again, we want to kill things in 1 turn, but it doesn't cost anything more, and it's on its way to good skills, so this is a pretty solid pick as well. You can also give Sanctified Killzone Armor Break, which is interesting. Olish points out that normally Armor Break on attacks isn't great, but this isn't actually an attack that deals damage. This is a debuff, and suddenly shattering 3 armor off of a zone of enemies, area 3, could be really, really great.
And because it's entirely optional, you can choose whether or not it's worth the willpower.
Yeah.
Purgators have a lot of skill picks to choose between, but you could definitely get some value out of this.
Yeah.
And one thing is, surprisingly, there are very few bad skills. There are reasons to take almost everything. It becomes a question of how you want to build your people and how you want to lean into them. And picking a path and leaning into it is probably the most important thing.
Yeah, I think having some idea of how you want to use your Marine and then building into it is important. Moving on into the top right corner after we pick up the duration for Sanctified Killzone is Grenade Pockets. Grenade Pockets were, grenades were super nice in the early game, just dealing with cultists, knocking off Overwatch, killing packs of 1 HP Groaners, throwing enemies off of ledges and insta-killing them, super good, just with your basic frag grenades. Later on, you'll find more advanced and more fun grenades, so this never goes out of style. You can then make your grenades have a bigger area of effect, always good, and add more ammo to them. I think I ran out of skill picks here, but this is a solid corner.
Yeah, it's a pretty substantial investment, but especially because Sanctified Killzone is such a nice ability to have. It's hard to say that you would never not want to spend it on the grenades, because you're spending 7 skill points total to max out the grenade tree, which is a substantial chunk of your tree. But the trees aren't so large that you can't do other things with them. And grenades, especially getting the ability to throw 3 grenades every map and increase the area of them, you're going to find situations where you can hit 2 or 3 people with grenades multiple times.
Yeah, absolutely. And later on, you can find power armor or Terminator armor in the armory that also gives grenade-focused skills.
Yeah, which lets you lean further into, this is the guy who has the good grenades, and he gets to throw, 3 of them or 4 of them.
If he could wear my chaplain's Terminator armor, he'd be throwing 5 of them with 2 extra area.
Yeah.
So you can always find use for grenades. Coming back down, Enduring Reflexes is usually pretty good. There are some passive skills in here. I would have liked it to pick up to go along with Mental Focus and Rapid Reload, but I think I just ran out of skill points.
Rapid Reload is not going to get a whole lot of benefit out of Enduring Reflexes.
True.
Situationally, it's possible for it to trigger, I'll say that,
Yeah.
but it's not something that's likely. If the only auto skill you have is Rapid Reload, Enduring Reflexes isn't going to do much for you. But there are plenty of good auto skills that you might want Enduring Reflexes for, Mental Focus being one.
There's also Support Fire up here, although we'll get to that. Return Fire, we'll get to it. There are a lot of passive skills that Enduring Reflexes could bolster here, but they're all kind of, I don't know, average at best choices, I would think.
You have to make some decisions if you want Enduring Reflexes.
Yeah. Let's see, we already did the Warp Charge. And then moving down into the bottom right corner, this is kind of a weird skill tree for me. This is, you deplete all of your ammo to buff the damage of the person you target with it. So you deplete all your ammo. What does he have? He has a side cannon with, I think, about 4 to 6 ammo. So this is, at the start, a 2 to 3 damage bonus for the next attack, and a stun. So, I don't know. Like, it's an AP and 2 willpower, and even if it's upgraded to be... Oh, that adds a crit damage.
Yeah, I would ignore the +1 stun because that's coming from your weapon. This doesn't actually apply stun to the target.
That's right, that's sanctioned. This is the stun side cannon. Damn it. Right.
Yeah, so Arcane Weapons fits in the same category as the Wave the Flag ability, but it's more situational. It's less useful. You're usually going to want your Purgator to be spending their ammo and AP shooting themselves.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see situations where if the Purgator is out of reach, you might, an extra 2 or 3 damage on an attack might enable you to kill an enemy that otherwise would survive to shoot at you. But it's not going to crop up that often.
It really isn't, and it's kind of an investment to get down to it in the corner. Probably would hard pass on this corner. Down at the bottom, Astral Aim is great, and probably an immediate pick, even if you don't go for the upgrades, although I would advise you go for Mental Focus. Ranged crits don't do the whole body part precision targeting thing. Astral Aim lets you do that. You
can even recover seeds at range.
Yeah, you can shoot things in the seed sacks and get their seeds via bullets somehow. That's great early game if you don't have a lot of seed recovery options. It can be great mid and late game too for just, this guy has, I think for an example for me is the Blight Lord Terminators. They have first strike and a big axe that does like 6 damage and maybe has a status effect on it. You can shoot their arm off. And it's like, okay, well now it's safe to get into melee with it. There are other enemies and other vital spots you can shoot, but this is just a great utility skill. And it's a guaranteed crit. So elsewhere in the tree will pick up extra crit damage, or you'll pick up a gun that has extra crit damage. Like, this is the hammer hand of ranged, and it's great and worth it.
Plus, it's a prerequisite for Mental Focus, which you probably want, because getting AP back on doing things you're going to do anyways is always good.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna be hammering that one home, that skills that give you AP back are life. to the left.
Well, we skipped over the remaining upgrades.
Oh, the warp charge?
Yeah, the warp charge is one of those things that's going to be somewhat situational. There are some enemies, the crab tanks, have low hit points, but a lot of armor.
Yeah.
And some of the regular turrets, you frequently get a bloom upgrade to give them a ton of armor. This is something that's going to be situational, but it allows you to trade willpower for taking something off the board in a single shot. And when that crops up, it's not going to crop up a lot, but you're trading willpower for more AP, which is great.
Yeah, that's good. I've never really paid attention to this because this only applies to the Stormbolter, but being able to get Armor Pierce on your Stormbolter might be decent. But you're a Purgator, you're not using a Stormbolter. So it's kind of sad that this only applies to the Stormbolter.
Yeah, it's a tax, unfortunately, that you have to pay. You're not going to get much value out of it. You can give a Stormbolter to a Purgator if for some reason you decide you want a melee weapon. But if you choose to do that on purpose, you probably have a good reason for it.
Yeah. But moving past it, this is where you start making the choice for Purgators. In the top left is the skill block for the Silencer, and in the bottom is the skill block for the Psy Cannon. So either way, you're going to get this upgrade to crit damage. This is just for any ranged weapon, so suddenly your ranged crits do 2 more damage, and this is great. And whichever way you go. This guy has a Psy Cannon, so I quickly grabbed the ammo upgrades, because when you start out, I remember when I first started my campaign, my Purgator had a Psy Cannon and 2 ammo, and that's rough. So if you're going to stick with it early on, and you're going to make a Psy Cannon build, I would immediately grab these 2 ammo, just so that your Psy Cannon isn't reloading every turn.
And in general, more ammo is better. It sort of is a soft AP recovery because you have to reload less frequently, which means you're spending less AP on reloading.
Yeah.
And there are a few things, like if you went in the bottom right tree with, I already forgot what the ability is, arcane weapons. More ammo increases the value of arcane weapons as well.
True. Either way, as you move towards either Silencer or Psy Cannon, you're going to pick up one of them. It's probably worth picking up the other one as well. Since this guy is a Psy Cannon, he's taken the bottom left corner, where Psionic Onslaught finds all of its upgrades to add damage, to add area of effect, to add more damage. And then Rapid Reload is great, just it's less time spent reloading, it's a 50% chance plus focus, so that's why the crystal's there. To just not waste an AP while you're busy shooting things. Psionic Onslaught with 6 damage? It's including the upgrades, yeah.
Yeah.
Has a fairly large area of effect, and it crushes groups. Early game, it could wipe out a bunch of clustered cultists, or plague bearers, or not plague bearers, poxwalkers, whatever. Whichever ones are the 4 HP melee Nurgles. It also tends to detonate cover or power cells or things nearby. So if they're taking cover next to something explosive, it'll also trigger that and add to its damage. Just a real solid skill. So if you're going to use a Psy Cannon, absolutely take everything in this tree. Then I guess we bypassed Return Fire. Return Fire is a nice idea, but I don't know if it's worth a skill pick. My Purgators are usually kind of the farthest back and the less likely to be shot. And I don't know, there's a whole lot of skills to pick on a Purgator, and unless you commune and get a bunch of extra skill points, this is kind of below the threshold of necessary picks before I run out of skills.
Yeah, and I actually feel like going into this a little bit more. Return Fire seems on paper like it's really good. Your Purgator has a heavy weapon. They have a 50% chance if they take a shot to just get a free shot. So it's like getting free AP. It seems really good, but the things that are working against it is like what Jade says. Your Purgators are usually not going to be the closest target to enemies, so they're not going to be shot at as much. And you can't equip Purgators with Terminator armor. you don't want them to be shot at. They're not your more durable people. So putting them in positions to take advantage of return fire means that they're going to take unnecessary damage that they don't have the ability to soak as well.
Right. I think this is a thing that's going to be recurring with some of the skill picks later on, is that this is sort of a failure state skill pick. If things go ideally, you're shooting and killing everything, and you're not even taking return fire. I mean, not the skill, but like, you're not taking incoming fire from Nurgle. If everything goes well, this skill will never activate. Now, you can't always, prevent the enemy from shooting at you, but it's still kind of a failure state pick.
And the thing that I mentioned about Purgators being a little bit weaker, like Cephalus here, he's rank 9, he's got 25 hit points, he's got 2 armor from his upgraded power armor. He can soak some fire. So return fire later on doesn't seem like it would be as bad a pick. But also later on, enemies tend to be more melee focused. So the opportunities for return fire to actually trigger are also more limited in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, there's still a mix of things, but yeah, you start seeing the champions, which are melee only. You start seeing the chaos spawn melee only. The plague bearers with the swords and everything. Yeah, I guess Nurgle gets a little bit more melee as they get top heavy. And then, if you haven't taken the side cannon, the last thing to cover is the silencer. The silencer I liked at the start because it had more range, more ammo. I was really unhappy with the 2 ammo side cannon when I first started the game, so I immediately went to the silencer. It starts off doing a little bit less damage, but it's more range. And then you upgrade it for more range. Ignore cover is just great. This is basically straight more damage on anything you can shoot that isn't out in the open.
Yeah, and partial cover, because ignore cover only ignores partial. It is only 1 damage, but this upgrade is functionally +1 damage for most of your shots.
I'd have to be absolutely sure before I claim it, but I do also believe it ignores partial full cover, which is a weird sentence because it seems like other things, but you can be in full cover and be kind of flanked 45 degrees and still get shot at. Like, just because they're in full cover doesn't mean they can't be hit. Like, if you're 90 degrees from someone in full cover and they're behind it, you can't hit them. Like in XCOM, you could, but at a real penalty. In here, you can't. They're obscured from your view. But if you skirt around them 45 or more degrees, you get like -2 damage from partial full cover, and I'm pretty sure this will ignore that as well.
Yeah, and that just makes the value of this even better. But I mean, a skill pick for +1 damage on most of your shots is good enough anyways.
Right. Upgrading for more crit damage, if you take the silencer and if you take the silencer, you're already going through this. This makes silencers have at least 4 damage on crit, which is great. Which is why most of my Purgators have like Blessed Greaves for more crit chance, because these damage nodes start adding up quickly. And then the last thing, support fire. On a Purgator, weirdly, it's not the best because it doesn't have upgrades. This is a skill that gets shared with Interceptors, but Interceptors have a whole square dedicated to it where there are upgrades to it. With this, it's just 2 damage, and it doesn't really feel great. The side cannons, I think, are base 4 damage, and especially late game, like this one is 6. You're spending an ammo for at least only half damage of a normal shot, and it doesn't feel good.
I still like it. If you're going to go with the silencer, it's only going to you're already going to be taking the crit damage and range upgrades. It's only 1 more point to take support fire. And what support fire lets you do is once per turn, you get to spend 1 of your ammo to add 2 damage to someone else's attack. And if situationally the bottom right, the arcane weapons situationally is going to be good, this is a much better rate of return for your ammo. It doesn't require you to spend any willpower, it doesn't require you to spend any AP, except for occasionally maybe needing to reload your gun.
Yeah.
So I like it. It's maybe not something you're going to want to rush for, but you could definitely get a whole lot of value over it, especially because if you're using a silencer, you've got the range to cover a lot of enemies with support fire.
It's true.
But I do need to add, to get value out of this, you need to remember that you have it. And that might mean taking your shots in the correct order.
Right.
So that you don't shoot something and waste a support fire on something that would die anyways. You can also increase the value of it a little bit if you end up going for Enduring Reflexes.
Yep.
Support fire twice per turn. Not on the same target, unfortunately, but
Yes.
it does let you support fire 2 separate targets.
That is an important note, and it has come up many times where I use a support fire interceptor. A support fire must target a second different enemy if you take Enduring Reflexes and try to activate it twice. Yeah, I think that is it for the Purgator.
Yeah. Something in terms of building towards things, I want to mention that return fire gains a little bit more value if you go up the purge tree up at the top, because the ability to reduce incoming shots by 2 damage combos really well with putting yourself out there to take incoming fire on purpose.
Okay, yeah. If you blind them, purge them, return fire support.
I don't think it's the best option, but you could definitely do it and get value out of it.
Yeah, there could be some synergy in there. Don't think I would really go for it over other options, but it could be worth experimenting. Yeah.
So one thing I want to mention as well, when you hire troops or get troops as reward, you can get rank 4, rank 5 troops, and they may have skill points that you would not have chosen. Like you can get a rank 5 Purgator that immediately has all of the blind tree picked or is pushed into arcane weapons. It's tempting to just turn around and force them to do whatever you want or consider communing them to respecking them. But I don't actually like the idea of respecking with commune. I think that there's enough value in the various skills that if you are in a situation where you have dead Marines, you might consider just throwing those skill points on someone else to lean more heavily into a particular thing that you're doing. Purgators are a great option for additional skill points. They have lots of situational value. There's going to be situations where, having blind could be really useful. Not all the time, but, you end up with a bad activation and are prepared to take a bunch of shots next turn that you can't do anything about besides reducing the incoming fire.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I like it. Should we go hit a Interceptor? Oh, he's on mission.
Viridian.
I usually use these guys as crit seekers. I just found a really good halberd just to play with. So I think pretty much every Interceptor, I would say, should be built more or less like this. We'll go through it and explain, but of any of the classes, I think Interceptors I've had the least flexibility with in terms of
But there's an
builds.
asterisk here.
Okay,
We'll get to that later.
Okay, here we'll start right so we can get to that last because that's very silly. Immediately upgrade your 4-strike. One more damage for 1 more willpower. Useful. They get hammer hand just like Justicars. If you need a crit, this is your button. It doesn't really need a lot of upgrading, but you're probably going to get this one just because if you crit on your hammer hand, you're getting another damage. The top right corner is the crit corner. Each skill point is crit percentage. There's more crit percentage there, and then there's crit damage. So these skills make you do a lot of damage when you land a crit.
And you want to be landing crits all the time.
Right. I have the focus shard on him instead of the melee crit scroll. Interesting. Whatever. And then Ruthless Precision. When you land a crit, 50% chance to gain an AP back. This is probably why I have the focus shard on. So that's an 85% chance. Land crits, do damage, get AP back, hit them again. It's going to be a recurring theme with how builds go.
Yeah, crits are life.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything more we really need to say about that. We're just going to hammer home the point. Do crits, get AP back, do more crits.
Yeah, if you're building your Interceptor for melee, you are taking the top right tree because 2 more crit damage, 15% crit chance, and even if you don't have any additional focus, a 50% chance to get back an AP, your first crit every turn. There's so much value in this.
Yeah.
You're already taking hammer hand because why wouldn't you? This is a side pick.
Yeah. Continuing downwards, there's willpower here, and it can be useful. My interceptors are usually kind of low willpower, and they use willpower a lot. Either if you're hammer-handing, or later, like, we'll get to it, but you're always teleporting. They are always eating willpower. So you may need willpower at your discretion. You can warp charge hammerhand to cause bleed. I think the Justicars also have that. It's still not particularly valuable.
I think it's even less valuable for the Interceptor because the Interceptor is more likely to be in a situation where they're hitting the same target multiple times.
Yeah, I think so. The only thing I can say about this warp charge is that it is in the way of cleansing a strike. If you need some way to purge, because purge has value later in the game, I personally feel that purge has more value later in the game when mutations get more common, enemies start with more mutations, and they're usually more powerful mutations. Purge starts having more value. I don't know if interceptors are necessarily the best choice to have purge on, but they are definitely in a position to be hitting people in melee and purging them.
Yeah, I like Cleansing Strike a little bit less because there are some targets that you would want to purge, but the thing that you would want to purge is a first strike reaction, which would mean that if you wanted to purge them with an Interceptor, you have to run forward and get hit to do it.
I don't think there's first strike mutations that you can purge.
I might be thinking of something else. But
You're thinking of an auto. Definitely. There are definitely autos that will first strike you.
yeah.
This gets rid of mutations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But purging mutations, there are some things where it's very valuable. And then for additional value, the warp charge of Cleansing Strike gives you Armor Pierce, which is not Armor Break. Armor Pierce just straight up ignores any armor that the target has. And like I mentioned, there are a few things late game that have a lot of armor but not a lot of hit points. And that would enable you to Cleansing Strike, spend a lot of willpower, but in doing so, kill something with a single attack, which is fantastic.
Yeah. There's definitely value just even in this single point of Cleansing Strike, although you have to go through the Hammerhand Warp Charge to get to it. Unfortunately, it does a lot of damage. I hadn't realized that this does 6 damage, which is great.
That may or may not be based on your weapon damage.
Oh, yeah.
Don't really know, but you can upgrade it for +2 damage, which is, if it's something that you're going to use, even situationally, spending the skill point for +2 damage on something is usually a good pick.
Yeah. The Warp Charge, there's good arguments for it, or if you feel like you get your Interceptors beat up too much, there's health. So I would say there's a case for just getting Cleansing Strike just as is, and maybe if you want to spend 2 more points to get the upgrade damage, it's there. This is an optional, but it's a solid option. I think the only reason I would recommend, or I have bypassed it, is because there's just so much other good shit on the left side of the screen we haven't gone into.
Yeah. You're going to have multiple Interceptors. Making sure that one of them has Purge is a perfectly valid thing.
Yeah.
Because the other thing to talk about is for team compositions, you could build all of your people exactly the same way. But there's a lot of value in diversifying because you're not always going to want to take the same crew up. They're going to have some people be injured, or events are going to take them out of the picture. So being able to mix and match a team to cover certain bases is nice and valuable.
Yeah. Okay, the bottom tree. Some willpower. Again, I always run low on willpower with these guys, but it's there. So this is a tree dedicated to making your Aegeus ability better, which is interesting. Like, Interceptors are sort of the glass cannon. They teleport in, they deal damage. But there's so many skills out there, and you probably want things dead, that I don't feel you have the points or the luxury of spending like 4 skill points, or 5 if you want to max it out and get the pockets, to take these choices that improve your Aegis. Like, I'd rather be spending that AP stabbing somebody.
Yeah, and the real reason that you'd be taking the Aegis Shield upgrades is because you really want the War Gear slot.
Yeah.
And War Gear is good and valuable. I mean, you can see right here with the Sanctic Shard. 1 slot of War Gear can equal 35% focus, or 25%. I think actually the level 3 is 35% ranged crit. The melee could be 15 or 25% more melee crit chance, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yes.
But this is going to be a decision that you make based on whether or not you have really good war gear you want to use, more so than you want to plan for it.
Yeah, definitely. If you see a build that you really like, and then, or have a great equipment item that you think would really accent or just push your build up, then maybe you can go for this. But it's an investment. It's a willpower, and then it's kind of 2 dead picks into Aegis, and then it's pockets.
Yeah, this is sort of an ideal thing that you would probably almost never take normally, but you might consider if you got 4 skill points worth of commune.
Yeah.
And you didn't see anything else particularly valuable that you wanted.
Being able to get a willpower free 4 points of armor on your Interceptor that is going to be in melee and in a place that maybe his armor value is going to become very relevant is not bad. But again, I'd probably rather just stab somebody than spend that AP on armor. Okay, let's move on to where the Interceptors really shine. Gotta get this willpower because you're immediately going to start using it every turn. Teleport is great. It is basically the class-defining ability. And it absolutely is. But it is going to drain your willpower as you use it. It's great. You can go up to 15 range, which is 3 AP worth of running. 15 is about visual range. I think the visual range of this game is about 15 to 20. So this is basically teleport anywhere your Interceptor can see. And you can land right next to people and then start meleeing them. You can also land 4 to 5 tiles away from them and then move and attack on the same AP. So this really lets you reach out and melee somebody.
Yeah. Basically, for the cost of 2 AP and a willpower, you can do any of your melee strikes, within a range of 20, which is most of what you can see from one end to the other. So if you have an Interceptor on one end of the battlefield, they can make it most of the way to the other end in a single turn, spending only 2 AP to run in and hit somebody.
Yeah, it's great. And then maybe get the willpower, because I'm always very low in willpower. They're getting kills, they're usually getting their willpower back. Swap allies. I only picked up to get into the next tree, and then only the other night where we were really dissecting the classes in preparation for this, that I realized how hugely valuable this could be. Because you could teleport in with a Interceptor, use up all but one of your AP, and then teleport your Interceptor out and have them be replaced with a Justicar or a Paladin or something else that's melee oriented who hasn't acted that turn. And you've replaced a Interceptor with 1 AP with something heavy in melee with full AP.
Now, I don't actually know the answer to this. I know a number of abilities only let you use them once per turn. Does teleport let you teleport multiple times in a single turn? Because it doesn't kill the strategy. You may not be able to teleport in, smack a dude, and teleport out.
Well, you know what you could do? You can teleport strike in and then swap allies out, because these are different abilities.
Yeah.
That would be...
It doesn't kill the ability entirely.
It doesn't. You're right. Good thinking. That's why I bring you along. You're always thinking of those things that I get too excited and just go right past. So there is a lot of potential utility in swap allies. Just getting out of danger, putting somebody else in if you want to just bring a heavy Terminator in, swapping people in and out of danger. It's great. But mostly, it just lets you get to teleport strike, which the wording was not clear, but as soon as you pick it and try to use it, you kind of figure out how it is. You get 15 tiles of distance worth of teleport, and along that way, you can target any number of enemies as long as you have distance for it, and then so long as the 15th tile, or whatever tile you want to end on, is an open space that is valid for the Interceptor to teleport to. So there's 2 uses for this. You can use this to go into combat from far away, much like you would use a teleport, and it's a more aggressive entry that deals damage. And that might mean the difference between, teleporting in and whacking something twice and not getting a kill, or teleporting in while dealing damage and then getting 2 AP to finish the job and kill something. it's willpower intensive, but it's good. But probably the most efficient way of using it is to already have your Interceptor close to things, and then just draw a squiggly line through all of the Nurgles that are surrounding you and hit all of them. You can get an unlimited number of targets hit with this thing if they're all bunched up and you don't have to spend a lot of travel time from your Interceptor to the first target.
Yeah, Teleport Strike can deal a theoretically impressive amount of damage. You could do almost 60 damage with one use if you had an unreasonable amount of Nurgle.
Yeah.
In practice, that's never going to happen, but you get a lot of situations where there are multiple enemies within range of Teleport Strike, so it's worthwhile to spend the extra willpower to do that instead of just the regular teleport. And even if you're only hitting one target, this is how you leverage the teleport swap. You Teleport Strike in, you hit a guy once, maybe twice, depending on how many executes you've got rolling, and then you swap allies to swap somebody else into melee range.
Which would be 4 willpower, which for me is very expensive. Your builds may vary, but yes, you can do a lot of very silly things with Interceptors, and I'll cover the silliest things. But if you're up here, and I do recommend you get Teleport Strike, this is probably a must-have, especially because Teleport Boost is right behind it. Just a 50% chance that when you teleport, and you're going to be teleporting a lot, you get an AP back. And, that's also why I have a Focus Shard here to turn it from a 50% chance to an 85% chance. Having an AP-free teleport, 85% chance of an AP-free teleport, is huge, it's amazing, and it's good. While you're up here, make it do more damage. And if you really want to spend more willpower, you can make it do more damage, which, again, in the second scenario where you're hitting a bunch of targets, like an entire cluster of cultists or something, you can make it do a lot more damage. I didn't have the skill picks because there's a lot to pick on the tree, and I don't have a whole lot of willpower to spare for it, so I didn't pick it, but strong consideration if you're going for it.
Yeah, and this is absolutely the sort of thing that if you have a Interceptor that you really like, and somebody else dies, you commune, get a few skill points, pick up the Warp Charge, pick up some bonus willpower nodes. You'll absolutely take use of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Bottom left, Support Fire. So this was the Purgator thing, but now it's on your Interceptor, and they have a whole box basically dedicated to it. And when I first started, I saw this, and I thought, oh, this is great, I'll get it. And a lot of people, when I was streaming it, was like, well, that's weird. Why didn't you immediately go to the top right corner where all the crits live? And, I didn't really have a great answer. I was just like, I saw this seemed appealing to me at the start. It fit kind of my mindset. And then when you get the upgrades, it just becomes death. Because you teleport in so that you're always within range, and then you take the extra skill points, and suddenly Return Fire is doing 5 damage. And then right behind it is Enduring Reflexes, which is just great in general, because it means you might be able to proc the extra teleport, if you do the teleport and strike thing. But it also means Support Fire is guaranteed to go off twice, at least as long as you target 2 different things. So this box of skills gives you an AP-free 10 damage a turn if you set it up.
Yeah, with the Purgator, I mentioned that for no AP, spending 1 ammo to add 2 damage to somebody else's attack is pretty good. Spending 1 ammo on a target that is probably not even shooting to deal 5 damage on somebody else's shot is amazing.
Yeah, and like you added, the Interceptor is all about melee. The ammo you have in your Stormbolter is probably not going to be spent by firing your own, or by using your own AP to shoot a target. Or if it is, you're probably in cleanup duty, like cleaning up the last thing of a pod that's drifted away. Absolutely, the start of every combat can be teleport Interceptor in, have somebody else take a couple of pot shots, get free Support Fire damage from the Interceptor, and then have the Interceptors stab them and finish them off. Oh, that's right, Enduring Reflexes, of course, also very, very good for Ruthless Precision.
Yeah, if you built every single Interceptor exactly this way, you would get a lot of value out of your Interceptors. And I think the Interceptors are probably... Excuse me. It's not like the other classes are bad, or it's not like you're.
Wow, man, you got some hiccups.
Yeah, it's not like the other options are particularly bad, but that these three corners synergize so well together that the lesser value, the opportunity, God damn it, the opportunity cost by picking anything else is just very large.
Yeah. It's not to say that like Purging Strike isn't bad, Cleansing Strike, that armor or pockets aren't bad. It's that you have a limited number of skill picks, and these are much stronger picks. Although, let's get into your favorite comedy quadrant.
So the final option seems really, really bad, and the opportunity cost of taking a silencer is tremendous.
Yeah.
Interceptors, much like Purgators, can't take Terminator armor, so using a silencer means that they can't equip a melee weapon. Why would you ever not want to take a melee weapon? Well, this feels a little bit gross to even describe, but Psychic Suppression is a fairly unique ability. There aren't that many ways to silence enemies. This is the only one that exists within the skill tree. And disabling psychic abilities on an enemy is pretty limited utility. But this feels gross. If you actually take a silencer on an Interceptor, then you can lean very heavily into support fire, which means that 5 damage and enduring reflexes to make it twice a turn allows you to use your support fire more heavily. You still have teleport. You can still teleport in to get, say, good flanking shots, which means that even though you don't have the Purgator's upgrades to the silencer, you can still generally act in such a way that you're avoiding cover for the most part. And if you really wanted to lean into doing something stupid and you have a whole bunch of Interceptors sitting around, you could do some absolutely stupid things by taking 4 Interceptors, giving them 4 silencers, and having them all just support fire each other.
Yeah.
You could do... This is probably the largest range damage downfield that you could accomplish, because 4 support fires means that, at least for the first 2 targets that you're shooting, if everybody's within range, you're dealing whatever your silencer's base damage is, and then 15 damage on the same target.
Yeah.
That's actually overkill on a lot of targets. So the difficulty that you'd have with running 4 silencer Interceptors with support fire is trying to figure out how to distribute your support fire so that not everybody shoots at the same target.
Well, if they die, the third and fourth, or the second or third support fire won't trigger.
Oh, well, that makes it a little bit easier then.
Yeah. But OS's idea of a teleporting gun squad is hilarious. And could be worth a video just for shenanigans.
I haven't tested it out. It's a lot of investment to make it work out.
It is.
But this is where I talked about earlier. You can make anything work if you lean into it hard enough. And it's not bad. Like, on the face of it, this seems kind of silly, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this probably is actually effective.
So it's 11 points to set that up. And you still have 7 points for anything else. So then you could get, let's see, 1, 2, 3, to get your AP back when you teleport. So
yeah,
you could, oh my goodness. You would just kind of lose the crit corner.
Yeah, and if you were swarmed by a lot of enemies where a lot of single damage, high value shots is less appropriate, Teleport Strike doesn't require a melee weapon.
It's true.
You can get some additional damage on multiple targets by burning a ton of willpower. Or if you really wanted to lean into it, you could also pick up the extra pockets and grab some extra war gear.
Yep. Get an expanded magazine for all that shooting you're going to be doing.
This isn't a recommendation so much as it is a way to illustrate that even things that seem useless, you can lean into them and find strong uses for them.
Yeah. Like at the start, I definitely wouldn't have considered putting a silencer on, but a silencer and support gear or support fire and teleporting could really be great. Yeah,
especially as you get, and this is one of the things that people have very mixed opinions about. But as you hire people, they're going to have skill picks that that wouldn't be the things that you pick.
Right.
rather than just immediately trashing them for the requisition. Think about what you can do if you lean into what they already have.
Yeah. All right. And lastly, we gotta go find an apothecary. So apothecaries, I think, are the ones that I have definitely built the most diversely. There are several good things on apothecaries, and there's a couple of traps, really. Since it's at 12 o'clock, we'll start with trap. I think he must have started with Affect Bleed on the Stormbolter. Like we said, bleed damage is not great. I mean, this is a passive to your Force Bolt or Psybolt, so it's not terrible. But even still, I probably would rather have this skill point somewhere else, even as something as mundane as like plus willpower. But it leads to Scourging, the Apothecary doing Psychic Bleed. It starts out pretty mild, area 2, afflicts bleed over 2 turns. So that's 2 damage over 2 turns. You can make the area rather large and get just huge clumps of Nurgle for it. And in
its defense, range 15 is very long range.
Yes, it's about sight range. And then Grim Surgeon makes it last for 3 turns. But even if you take all 5 of the points necessary to get all of this, you have an ability that affects area 4 at range 15. But what it does is it does 2 damage of bleed over 5 turns. And that sounds kind of okay. And I keep thinking of like Plague Doctors and Darkest Dungeon, where it's like, yeah, that works out. Combat lasts that long. In this game, combat does not last that long. If you encounter enemies and you can scourge them, and they're still alive 5 turns later, something has probably gone wrong.
Yeah, it might be more appropriate to say that you do not want combat to last that long.
Right.
Planning for combat to last that long is planning for failure.
Really is. So it's a great idea. I think if the devs ever tweak things, they could make this viable if they turned Grim Surgeon into, instead of adding 3 turns of duration, they just added 3 damage to each turn it bleeds. So you go from doing 2 damage over 5 turns for 10 total damage to doing 5 damage over 2 turns for 10 total damage.
Yeah, I think it could be tweaked to be appealing, but right now it's just, I would never be interested in taking this. There's no situation where I would think that these were skill points well spent.
Yeah, like I always said, usually there's no bad skill picks. You lean into anything. Scourging is the exception. It is terrible. Don't do it. Moving on to the right tree, this is your heal tree, making your Narthasium tool thingy. How do I even say that? Whatever. Heal better. It's great. I'm a big fan of healing and sustainability. It's good. It is a bit willpower intensive. So consider picking up max willpower as you go through the tree. Or consider giving them armor that increases their willpower.
Yeah, on release, the Battlefield Medicine was a little bit cheaper. It was 2 willpower instead of 3. And I can understand why they would want to make it more expensive, because this is the only method that you have of restoring hit points without, equipping Medicae Skulls. As long as you have enough willpower to funnel this, you can keep healing your guys infinitely, and that goes against sort of the design philosophy of the game.
Right.
They don't want you to stall indefinitely. They want you to be forced to move forward. I'm not going to say that Battlefield Medicine isn't good, because it's absolutely fantastic. It does something that is very difficult to get other ways. But you won't be able to rely on it to keep all of your people topped up infinitely.
Yeah, it's going to get very willpower expensive very quickly. And especially early on, I didn't have a great way of getting Apothecary's willpower. Typically it comes through enemy kills. Apothecaries are, at the start, your weakest damage dealers. But it's definitely worth picking up. Maybe get the willpower. You could make it a little bit better, but this skill unfortunately leads to... Well, actually not unfortunately. It leads to this corner, which is optional. But I would say I think all 3 of my Apothecary builds have the top right corner selected. So you can warp charge the heal to spend even more willpower, but it heals more and it actually gives them an AP. So some value in there. but mostly that's on the way to get pockets. Apothecaries are going to be your people using servo skulls, get pockets for servo skulls, and then use your servo skulls more times per mission.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a circular thing, because if you could put servo skulls on other Marines and get extra ammo for them, there would be some more value in this. But because Apothecaries are the ones that get the extra war gear slot for servo skulls and get the extra ammo for it, you might as well throw your servo skulls on the Apothecary anyways, because that just for one equipment slot, you're getting more value out of it than that equipment would be on anyone else.
Right. Up here is the Apothecarian Skull, which lets you use Biomancy on targets at any range, which sounds pretty great. And there's some Biomancies over here on the left, but it also makes them more expensive. So it doesn't really seem worth it. This is a very optional thing that I wouldn't recommend, but that's just because I've tried it once or twice, and I didn't like the additional AP and willpower cost. Your discretion is advised. I wouldn't recommend.
So yeah, this looks pretty good, especially if you plan on leaning heavily into Biomancy, but it doesn't really communicate that it's not just a matter of equipping the Apothecarian Skull. You also have to activate an ability on the Apothecarian Skull, which costs 1 AP and 1 willpower. So the cost of using your Biomancy at range is very stiff.
Hold on, I have one guy with it. Hank?
Durant.
Yeah, there it is. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So to equip this, yeah, you have to activate it. It's an AP and a willpower. It kind of ruins it for me.
Yeah, if it were a passive trait for equipping the servo skull, it's still a pretty steep opportunity cost, because that's taking up one of your war gear slots, which could otherwise be given to a grenade or another servo skull.
So I'd probably recommend against that. Slightly different build here for this Apothecary versus the last one, who has in fact gone in the extra healing, and then moved into the melee discipline area. Affect bleed on 4-strike, not super great, but it's in the way of everything else, and it's a passive. Doesn't cost more willpower if you're going to 4-strike. It's there. It's in the way. The other things in this corner are great though. Extract seed. Just anytime your Apothecary melees something that has bloom seeds, collect them. Don't need to crit. It's great.
Yeah, there's a mild opportunity cost for like using Hammerhand, because there are some enemies that you want to collect the bloom seed from, but you also want to inflict, remove one of their parts. And the bloom seed is on a random part of the enemy, so you can be faced with the choice of collecting the seed or making the enemy, stunned more easily, or remove something dangerous from it. It's pretty mild, but this just means that you never have to make that decision with the Apothecary. You always collect the bloom seed on a melee. You don't even need to crit for it.
Yeah, that's great. And then if you're going to be meleeing with your Apothecary, you can pick up crit damage. 3 crit damage on 1 skill point is a really dense pick. Like our Justicars and Interceptors were like 1 damage, maybe 2 damage on a skill pick. This is super good.
Yeah, a lot of value for 1 skill point.
And then Ruthless Precision, like we say, anything you do that you're going to be doing anyway and you have a chance to get AP back is great. Always get Ruthless Precision if you're going to be meleeing with that character.
Yeah, and you may not be meleeing with your Apothecary. It's entirely feasible to say that this Apothecary isn't going to go for melee skills, and you might not be interested in this tree at all. But if you happen to get a pretty good Narthecium, you might as well make an Apothecary to take advantage of it.
Yeah, part of this build is influenced by Hank picking up Vindication and Glory, which hates organic targets. So he can run up to and almost one-hit like Plague Marines. If you're going to Seed Snatch, though, you might as well pick up Ruthless. But yeah, you don't need to melee with an Apothecary.
Yeah, if you're going here for Seed Snatching, you might as well pick up Ruthless Precision anyways.
Yeah. On the bottom skill tree, you can put Apothecaries and Terminator armor. If you're going to make a melee Apothecary, this is a strong consideration. I didn't do it on this guy because I hadn't intended to make a melee. He was my first Apothecary of the campaign, and I was just kind of still feeling things out. I might have picked this up had I realized what I was going to end up doing. my first thought was they're apothecaries. I need them to heal. I want them to be as mobile as possible. Terminator armor, probably not great for that. But with the 3 uses of servo skulls and really the minor limitations that Terminator armor put on you, just not being able to jump gaps or climb walls, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, Terminator armor is not so impressive that it's always worth a skill pick either. It's going to depend in large part whether or not you want to go for it. If you really decide that you want the extra base 2 armor just from having Terminator armor, but because war gear can inform your decision so heavily, you might decide that you want to take this pick because you have a good suit of Terminator armor that you want to give to an apothecary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Conversely, if you don't have any particularly good Terminator armor suits, but have some really good power armor, you might just skip over this for a while.
Yeah, definitely. It leads into Emperor's Judgment, which I guess, actually, I forgot, is kind of another hard pass. Much like Scourging, I don't see a whole lot of value in this. Inflicting Hobbled. Like, -2 move speed to your enemy for a couple of turns. You can make it larger. It's not great. Maybe immobilization makes it worth it, but I still really don't feel like an AP and 2 willpower to immobilize things is worth it.
I'm actually going to say that immobilization, weirdly enough, makes it less valuable.
Right.
So the use case I can see for Emperor's Judgment is you activate a pod, your apothecary happens to be relatively close, you have these skills. Spending an AP and a willpower to hobble an enemy means that they have to spend more of their actions getting to you as opposed to moving up to you and attacking. So this could save you from a couple of incoming attacks while still allowing the enemies to move closer to you. For any ranged enemies, hobbled is not going to have much value. The problem with the warp charge is that enemies moving closer to you saves you AP because it means you don't have to move up to them to attack them. And if you immobilize them, then what that means is that if you want to run up and hit them or move to flank to avoid cover, or in general just stop them from existing, forcing them to stay away from you is opposed to that. That means that you have to spend more AP getting closer to them, or at the very least, you're wasting time waiting for the immobilized to run off or covering the distance.
Now that is they're very good points, but I think that's a little situational because Nurgle does field many melee-only opponents. And if they have gotten too close and you're too surrounded or you need a breather or something, you could immobilize a whole bunch of like the Plague Walkers and then back off and just shoot them to death.
Yeah, and if you happen to be doing a ranged heavy composition, there's definitely a lot of value that could be done with that. I don't think that for a lot of situations that Emperor's Judgment is going to have a meaningful effect.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I would probably hard pass this as well. I can't really think of a build where I'd want it. We have thought some outlier scenarios where it has value, but there are other ways to deal with those that don't force you to put your skill points kind of way out of the way.
And again, you might get an apothecary that starts with it, in which case, think about what situations where it might be valuable. Like, again, later on in the game, there are lots of melee enemies, and you can use Emperor's Judgment to give yourself some breathing room. Or you can use Emperor's Judgment to split the enemy pack, immobilize some of them and not others. What that means is that you have some enemies that run towards you and you can focus on them. And then the next turn, you can focus on the remainder after you've mopped up the first set. So I'm not saying that there's no value to be had here. I don't think that it's as
good as the rest of the board.
Situation, yeah. And the rest of the board is really good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And we thought this a little bit more than I was first giving it credit for. So yeah. All right. The left side is the Biomancy side of the board. You will get willpower and then move into warp speed Biomancy, which feels kind of like a weak one. I understand why it's the first one because putting Iron Arm there would be way too convenient. I mostly get these to move on to one of the other corners. Situationally, it could be good, but you're spending an AP and 2 willpower to give somebody else move speed and crit damage. Crit damage isn't bad, but, crits aren't guaranteed. If that was just flat damage, I would see this having a lot more value.
So I view this as a weaker version of the Wave the Flag. And
Yeah.
all of the biomancy suffer from the same problem where they require you to target someone within one range. And that's a pretty big limitation. That means that most of the time, to use any biomancy, you're spending 1 AP to move to the target, and then another AP to actually cast the biomancy. That is a steep cost.
Almost. Much like melee, you can move 4 or 5 and then biomancy them.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't actually aware of that's how it works. So,
Yeah.
so biomancy is a little bit better than I thought.
But it
but
still
where
does
I
mean
call
that your
this-
apothecary has to be basically hugging a guy.
Yeah. Where I call this sort of like a weaker version of move the flag is because it adds move speed in a situation where you would be using biomancy on somebody to run forward and melee a guy, which, because it gives crit damage, is every time you use Warp Suit biomancy. Depending on how far away the enemy is, this can save you an AP in movement. But that's going to be super situational. It's going to depend entirely on the layout of the battlefield. And it's not something that you can rely on.
Yeah. If this had a bit more duration, I think I would... Like, if it had 3 duration, I think it might be more worth it. Because I'm thinking the only time I would really probably plan on using this is at the start of an engagement. The enemy is far away. We're not going to make it into melee or conflict on the first turn. Everybody takes positions behind cover, and you spend the first turn buffing an Interceptor or a Justicar or something first. And then on the start of the second turn, your melee guy now has more move speed and more crit damage, and then he goes into it.
Yeah.
At 2 turns, you're only getting like that one window or 1 turn of opportunity window. Way I described it. With 3 turns, the first turn is essentially burnt and lost, waiting for the enemy to close, and then turns 2 and 3 are the melee and the follow up. So
it's also worth mentioning that biomancy can last a little bit longer than you'd think.
Oh, with the way that when combat ends, it's still technically the same turn.
Yeah.
And then
When
if you find another pod, it's still technically the same turn.
Yeah. In any situation where you have completely ended combat, everybody gets their AP refunded, but the turn doesn't end. And likewise, when you trigger a pod, everybody gets their AP refunded, but the turn doesn't end. So you can actually make biomancies last a little bit longer, sometimes even between multiple engagements with a single use.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But that's hard to pull off on purpose. It's situational. It's nice when it happens. Making warp speed 3 turns would make that happen a lot more often. So if I had to change warp speed to make it more attractive or appealing to use, I actually think making it 3 turns would be the way to do it.
Right. You have, I'm glad I bring it along because you constantly think of things I overlook. There are times when you get there are Nurgle here radar blips, and you can kind of prepare for an engagement. That would be a good turn to prep biomancy and then send somebody forward to trigger the encounter, because now it's all the same turn. You've got your full 2 turns of charge on it.
Yeah.
So I think you could, if you thought about this a little more, kept it in the front of your mind, which I definitely don't when I play, you could probably get a good value out of it. But really, it's there to get to other things. The other things that I especially like is Iron Arm Biomancy. This one is probably a pick for all of my apothecaries. Stun damage is great. Stun damage lets you execute enemies. Executing enemies lets you gain AP for everybody. More AP on everybody is great. If you can snowball pretty hard. Let's see, a Plague Marine. Well, a Cultist has 3 stun. You put this on them and they get stunned in 1 hit. So you run up, you hit somebody, and then you execute them. You're getting AP back. A Plague Marine has 4. You shoot them once with somebody, you run up and you hit them with Iron Arm Biomancy. They're stunned. You execute them. You get AP back. You just keep that ball rolling. Even in the later game when things have 6 to 8, whatever, they also have correspondingly more health, so they're going to survive more hits. Just knocking down things stun meter can really snowball encounters in your favor.
Yeah, and even 6 to 8 sounds like a lot, but if you have Iron Arm Biomancy, that means that all you need to do to stun them is hit them twice. And then you can spend your 3rd AP on the execute, or have somebody else run up and do the execute.
Yeah.
Especially if you combo it, there are weapons that do increase stun damage.
Yeah.
Even +1 increased stun damage on a melee weapon means that the the highest stun on an enemy that I can remember is 8, which means that it's 2 AP to get the stun and 3rd AP to trigger them. That's a total net positive on AP, or at least it's breaking even if you spend 1 AP to cast Iron Arm Biomancy, 2 AP to stun, then the 4th AP to execute. Then you've just completely refunded the AP cost to everybody. It's like free death.
Yeah. Stunning and executing is absolutely a combo system that people should try to exploit as much as possible. So naturally, give it the extra duration and give it the extra stun damage if you're going to go into Iron Arm. Surgical Adept, if you're going to do a lot of Biomancy, like for Iron Arm and Endurance, then maybe consider picking it up, because it's, again, one of those things that's free AP. We always love free AP. There's a lot of
less valuable because it's not something that you're going to be doing as much.
Right.
Using Biomancies costs a lot of willpower, so you can't just do it willy-nilly.
Right. And
frequently, I would say Surgical Adept is a free AP, but it's on somebody for whom that AP is less valuable.
Yeah.
Because you're basically refunding the cost, and it lets you get an extra shot or maybe move in and take an attack yourself. But the Apothecary is less likely to be in a position to take great advantage of the AP.
Yeah.
It's not bad, but as you can see here, it wasn't taken just because other things were a little bit more valuable.
Right. Yeah. I'm only ever gonna cast, it's only gonna trigger on Iron Arm. I'm probably never using Warp Speed. I don't have a ton of willpower to be using Iron Arm frequently, and my willpower is also going to be being spent on just healing. So, yeah, you're not gonna get a lot of triggers of Surgical Adept. At least with this sort of build. There's wiggle room for it, definitely. And then I guess the last thing for this is Endurance Biomancy. So this can be useful for Purge, or not Purge, Purges on enemies, Purify, to get afflictions off of your Marines. There are times when the Bloom meter will afflict you, or there are enemies that launch goo, or you go through the plague hazard zones. There are a lot of reasons why you might need Purify. And for only 1 willpower, this is actually pretty good. Everything else is expensive. This is 2, this is 3, healing with the Narcethium is 3. So a 1 willpower Purify is pretty good.
Yeah, and the Narcethium does not remove debuffs. So this is, aside from spending a Servo Skull, this is your only way of purifying friendly Marines.
Right. I was about to say that, this isn't necessarily a necessary slam pick to get rid of things, because you can have 3 uses of Servo Skull. But it is good, and it is cheap. But it also leads to some other skills. It also has resistance, which is good for preventing other future afflictions. I have mostly stayed away from going out of my way to gain resistance on my Marines. Typically, I can just deal with afflictions, and if they're really bad, I have a Servo Skull. I don't think it's this one. It's probably the one on mission I can't show. But the skill in the corner here, Sympathetic Biomancy, seems underwhelming at the start. A 15% chance that when you biomance somebody else, the Apothecary also gains the same effect. But you can work with this. If you find armor that has focus, or you equip the focus crystals, you can turn this up. I think with just the tier 2 crystal that I found during my campaign, I can turn this into a 50% chance. So now, if you could imagine, a 50% chance to also gain Iron Arm Biomancy on your Apothecary. So now, not only...
You could lean into Surgical Adept and recover the AP that you used for the Biomancy.
True. I was going to say, you put this on a Justicar, you put this on an Interceptor, they go off and start wrecking Nurgle. But then it happens on your Apothecary as well. They start punching Nurgle, and you snowballs the number of executes you're likely to get in a turn or two. So there is definite value if you're going to synergize Sympathetic Biomancy and Iron Arm. It requires focus items, like the shard or armor that ups focus. But this is also a thing you probably want to do if you're ready to melee with your Apothecary anyway. Like, this guy already has Seed Snatcher, Ruthless Precision, the upgraded crit damage. He is ready to get in there and melee. So making him do extra stun damage when he buffs other people, absolutely a great synergy. It's skill point intensive to do, and it's probably willpower intensive to do, but having 2 people run around dealing extra 2 stun with their melee attacks for 2 turns can lead to a lot of executes, which leads to a lot of AP coming back on your turn, which just leads you to hitting more people for more stun. It just keeps going.
Yeah, this isn't necessarily something that you would specifically build around, unless you were taking advantage of, you've got a focus crystal, and you have a few extra skill points sitting around because there's some jello in the pod.
Dead Marines, that's what you need, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is my full Biomancy guy. This guy is eventually getting there. He needs his 9th level to do this. Yeah. Although I didn't get him Seed Snatcher, but this was the build attempt. I think if you do this, you don't have quite enough skill points to go all the way into Servo Skulls, although he also apparently started with Afflict Bleed, which is not great. Yeah, so it's something that you can be built into, but it's going to be, I think, all of your skill points to do, because it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to get there. And, well, then you got like 8 left over. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You could do that. Yeah, you could do that. Just go full left side and bottom right corner.
Yeah, you would be giving up the extra pocket slot, which is very nice. It's very hard to give up on the Apothacary. But again, this is something where if you wanted to lean into it, it's very possible to do so. And if you've lost a couple of Marines, you can spend the extra skill points to make it just that much better, so that you don't have to make any trade-offs.
Yeah.
That's really what Commune is it allows you, it's something of a catch-up mechanic, but ultimately it allows you to make decisions about your character builds where you are not making sacrifices, you're not making trade-offs, because you can have it all.
All right. Wow, it took us a long time to go over the 4 classes. Holy shit. But those were the 4 basic classes. Later on, we'll make another video about the 4 advanced classes. I just hope people found this useful. Just been streaming it, and people have been asking, and people have said there's been some really bad guides that were made by people that maybe got frustrated after 2 hours and put out some misinformation, or just not the thorough analysis, or misconceived core mechanics or something. So, Olish, thanks for joining me and offering your insights.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you guys later on for the advanced classes.